Well, hello everyone. This is Christine Peckstein with Move Into Action, and I just want to welcome you to my show, Kicking Your Butts. Today, we're going to kick our butts, our excuses, our limitations, and things like that by taking a look at boundaries and exploring those a little bit further, because what we're going to do this week is look at our motivation, my motivation for having boundaries. Why would I want boundaries in my life if they're going to limit me, prohibit me? Why on earth would I myself be motivated to create boundaries for my life? So this week, what we're going to do is take a look inward at how boundaries affect us and why we want those boundaries, because they are important. Last week, we kind of looked outside and we were looking at other people as we talked about boundaries. This time, what I want to do, I want to guide you through this episode to take a look inward, because life change is not all about changing things outside of us, changing the world, changing other people, changing, the way that society is or how it affects us. We have to sometimes look at our own lives and determine how we look inward so we can use the things that we're learning to change ourselves. We need to grow. We need to take these things personally and put them to work in our lives by looking inward at how we can make changes, how we can improve ourselves, how we can let go of some stuff, shift some things around, do some things differently to improve our lives, let go of some stress, and do some life management maintenance. And that's what this is all about, is our life management maintenance. So let's get started. Now, last week we focused on the cost of living without boundaries, of how boundaries affect us and it affects our freedom. We established boundaries and we looked at the ones that are needed to keep people and things out of our lives to ensure that we have the freedom to live as we wish within our lives, within the boundaries of our own life. We get to choose what comes in, what goes out, how we want to live, and that kind of thing. So we talked a lot about those outside influences that would affect our freedom or infringe on it if those boundaries were not present. That was episode 75. We did that last week. This week, we're going to look inward. Boundaries give us limits, and we think, if they give us limits, then why do we want them? Because don't we want to live limitless? Don't we want to take advantage of everything that comes our way? Well, if we're limited, maybe we can't do that. It's not necessarily what I'm talking about. So what would my motivation be for wanting boundaries? Well, let's go over a couple of things that would be motivation for each of us to have boundaries that we set in our lives, looking inward as we look at ourselves. We want boundaries, number one, for personal protection. How about the safety of ourselves? We need boundaries because they help protect us and they ensure privacy. But not only do they protect us, they protect others that are important to us and maybe involved in our lives, like our homes, our families. We want to be able to protect those individuals with boundaries that are close to us, that are living in our homes with us, that are in close relationship with us. We want safety of ourselves, but we also want to ensure within those boundaries that those that we love and care for are also protected, that they're safe, that they have privacy. Not everything is meant for every person to know. And I think that we cross that line a lot today, where people just have the expectations because of social media that your life and everything about you is social, and it's not. You are entitled to create boundaries looking inward at your own life. You can create boundaries in order to maintain and ensure your privacy and the privacy of those living within your home. And you have the freedom to choose those things of what is good and what you want to keep out, what compromises you or your integrity, and then you get to pick and choose. That's looking inward at why we want boundaries, because we want to be protected, we want to be safe, and we want to ensure our privacy. Now, when we look inward, and I keep saying that because a lot of times when we talk about change, it's easier to look outward and say, okay, I know what needs to change, and it's everybody else or everything else in the world, but it's not me. So when we do coaching, and as I put these episodes together, as I'm over at SOLMA, the School of Life Management Academy, and I'm putting together your training videos, the monthly maintenance videos that accompany these very podcast episodes, so that you get that further coaching and training, and then you are maintaining your life. You are putting it into action every single month. We need to look at our own lives, and I'm just letting you know right now, I do this too. So I'm looking at my own life, and most of the time when I'm writing these things, I do take a pause and I look at my own life. So I'm going to share with you some specific things as I went through and I looked inward at me of why I need boundaries. And maybe you can relate to some of these, all right? The first one, when we talked about safety, here's what I mean. I need boundaries specifically for my safety and the safety of others, okay? Because here's one reason. I have a 5-speed. And I love my 5-speed. I drove an hour away from where I live to buy this car because it was a 5-speed. Finding a 5-speed anymore is not so easy because everybody digs an automatic. They want automatic. They're stuck in traffic. Me, I get enjoyment and I love the power at my fingertips that I find in a 5-speed. It puts me in control of the car. I'm a control freak. I like that. I feel I can maneuver better and things like that. Okay, but if there were no speed limits, here's where boundaries, when I look at me and I'm driving my car, I need boundaries in that 5-speed because without speed limits, I would have more fun in that car, I can guarantee you, than what I can have with that 20-mile-an-hour speed zone that is downtown. Rarely do I get out of second gear. I have fun till I reach second gear, third gear if I'm lucky. And so I need those boundaries because I need to make sure that I don't have too much fun in my car because without it, I could get hurt. I could cause an accident. Something could happen and I could jeopardize my own safety. Not only that, I could jeopardize the safety of the occupants in my car with me, which would be my children, my family, friends, that kind of thing. So see, boundaries are not just necessary for my own personal safety. They're necessary for the safety and the protection of others because not every person is going to do the right thing. And when you're behind the wheel, there are a lot of idiots out there. And if there were no laws and no boundaries, and I'm saying I could be one of them, if I let my guard down and I drove that car without regard to any laws or anything else, if there were not those boundaries keeping me in check, it would be awfully easy to cross that line. Even in the name of fun. It's like, oh, that would be so much fun. Let's just try it. Well, that try could be a disaster. And so that's why for the safety of myself and others and people in other vehicles, even think about it on the sidewalks because you lose control of your car and, even pedestrians are not safe. So it could be those walking on the sidewalks or riding their bikes. Nobody would be safe if those boundaries were not in place. So that's why when I look at me in my own life, as we look inward, we need to really think about why we need boundaries because they serve us well. Okay, now I was thinking about it also as to the members of my household. Why does this family, looking inward, why does my family need boundaries? Because I want to focus on me and the people within my family unit, those that I'm in control of, those that I am raising, those that I am instilling morals and values in, and hopefully giving them the tools that they need to grow up because I want to look at why they would need boundaries too. Because as a mother, and whether you're a father, a grandparent, aunt, uncle, it doesn't matter. If you are in charge of other people, you need to understand, look inward at the unit that you have control over, that you are growing, that you're maturing, that you're responsible for. They need boundaries, and you need to have boundaries set in your household. Don't look outside and go, oh my gosh, those parents are not raising those kids right. Look at that. It's time to look inward and look at us and look at how we behave and look at what we model and look at how I'm raising these human beings because boundaries are important to them. If not, they're going to grow up and be so out of control. And then people are going to be going, what happened? Well, I can tell you what happened. Boundaries were not given or they were there, but they weren't enforced. Parents decided to be more friendly than they were using tough love and things like that to raise those kids so that they grew up respecting and honoring those boundaries that are designed to keep them safe, to keep others safe, and to be used for their safety and their protection, as well as their freedom. So it is important for us to look inward. Look at your family. When I did this, I said, okay, my kids need boundaries because I want them to stand for their rights. I don't want them to be taken advantage of. But they can do so reasonably. So they can stand for their boundaries and their rights. They can give me their thoughts and opinions. But there's a boundary that comes with that in my home with my teenagers. They can talk to me. They can give me their feedback, but they will do so respectfully. It does not involve a foul mouth. Those boundaries, I limit it. It does not include an attitude. There may not be a lack of respect for authority, and instead, I have expectations, and those boundaries make sure that those lines are not crossed. They need to be responsible and honor their parents. They need to be responsible and honor their teachers in the way that they stand up for themselves or that they make their thoughts and opinions known, and they get involved in things as they grow up and mature. So they can honor their parents and their teachers and the authority figures around them. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, sir. No, sir. There's no reason for the chip on the shoulder. There's no reason, and it is unacceptable to speak rudely or just out and out defy someone that is over them, who is responsible for them. They need to learn how to respect the boundaries in the home that are set. Now, you can have those conversations. They can say, Mom, I disagree with that, and here's why. And that is allowed, absolutely, because they have that safety within my home. There's a boundary there that gives them the freedom to do that. However, with that freedom comes responsibilities. This is where boundaries come into play as we look inward. We have to remember that, yes, you have the freedom to do that, but you also have responsibilities to love and respect other people. So that was what I came up with as I looked at this and said, why does my household, why do we need boundaries? Why would I want to set those? Why do I want to work so hard to enforce them, even if they push against them and they hate them? They know that they are loved, they know that they're secure, and they know that they're free to live within them here, so long as those boundaries are not crossed. Because if they are, there are consequences. If there are no consequences, I'm telling you, boundaries are pointless. They're merely suggestions. And I think it's important for us to remember that. Okay, so I went back and I said, all right, let's see this. We need boundaries. I need boundaries. And there are many people that need boundaries in our homes. When we look inward, kids need boundaries. We also need to make sure that within our homes we have a life management plan, because that helps us prioritize our life, our time, our energy, our resources. We need to understand that boundaries protect our privacy. They give us a reasonable place to share our thoughts and our feelings with respect, and by honoring value to the self and the value of those around us. It also helps us remember that love is at the forefront. We need to keep it healthy. Even if we disagree, that whatever happens within the walls of this family unit, within our boundaries, is that it needs to be healthy behavior. It does not need to be perverse. And so whatever happens in my home, I don't want there to be a perversion to it. There is a boundary that will not be crossed. One of those with internet access is the use of porn and things like that within my home. It is known that there will not be any of those activities that take place on these grounds, and it will not be tolerated. Okay, another reason that we need boundaries is to protect our personal space so that we can think. Have you ever thought what it would be like to lose your right to think and then to act and live based upon what you think? You have the right to have a boundary so that you can take time out to think. And we need to protect that. If we have people infringing on our time all of the time, or our energy, or coming in and filling everything with their thoughts, we're not protecting our personal boundaries that allow us the time that we need to think and process information and make decisions. Boundaries are important to us when we look inward because they help to protect our property. Your property does not need to be used without permission. And so there are boundaries that help us protect our property. We need boundaries regarding permission. Think about boundaries in regards to permission. I want you to think about this. Okay, this is where date rape and rape in general comes in. Those boundaries are crossed because all of a sudden the word no, well, that's just a suggestion, right? You don't really mean that. No, yeah, I really do. And that's a boundary that you will not cross because no means no. So we think about boundaries from that personal protection standpoint. And that is why it is important for us to have those boundaries in place and to be able to enforce them and to raise our children to know why boundaries are important. A world without boundaries would be a complete disaster. You have to think about that. And I think it's important for our young people to understand what would happen if there were no boundaries. So we also have the rights to create and the boundaries for our personal well-being. And that's where all of that comes in. Some boundaries also that we talk to our children about when we look inward is who they're allowed to talk to and who they're not and why. And that's where pedophilia comes in, the pedophiles, because our kids need to understand that they have the right to create safe boundaries around them to keep them safe. And we teach boundaries when we tell them about stranger danger. I don't want you talking about this. If you don't know that person, you don't talk to them. If they say they lost a puppy, you do not go near them. They learn to understand those boundaries are there for their protection, and that there are sometimes very, very dangerous consequences for not respecting those boundaries, and they have to understand that. And we also teach them when we talk about those no-touch zones in the swimsuit area where mom and dad told me nobody's allowed to touch me where my bathing suit fits. You know, those are areas that are off limits, and that's why it's important as we look inward to make sure that we discuss and we set and we uphold boundaries within our homes, because they help us respect others, but they also help us inwardly respect ourselves and those that we live with. Okay, so looking in deeper, we need boundaries for our own good. And sometimes what I mean by that is we need boundaries to protect us from us. I need boundaries to protect me from me at times. I do. I could eat chocolate all day. And if there were no boundaries about my health or diet or anything, I would just eat way too much of it. I'd eat way too much chocolate, and I would exercise way too little. I mean, that is just a given. That's just how I am. And so by having boundaries in place that limit the amount of junk that I allow into my life, I'm taking care of myself because of those. And I know that if I don't have those kinds of boundaries in my life, that there could be some serious health issues. The same is for our finances. We need to have boundaries. How much do we spend? And how do we spend it? Do we spend it on our own? Does there need to be a consultation that takes place? What are the boundaries and the limits for that? And what happens when those are not respected in the family unit? And think about it just from those types of standpoints as you look at the different life areas. And we'll do that more over at Soma. So if you're not quite sure yet how to think about or decide how those boundaries or lack thereof will affect the 9 different life areas, don't sweat it, because that is what we're going to get deeper into over at Soma, the School of Life Management Academy. And if you have questions about Soma, or you want to participate in the monthly coaching and training, your monthly maintenance, your life management maintenance, where you put this stuff into action in your life every single week right after these shows, then head over to moveintoaction.com and click on Soma, and you can get started there and join us right away. All right, so we know that we need boundaries. I need boundaries around myself to preserve my goals, my life, my health, my integrity, and my wealth. Because wealth is not always money. Wealth sometimes are just things that you value and cherish, and you can be wealthy with those things. So don't think it's just money, but boundaries help us preserve and protect that as it relates to us. And we have to set limits because we can destroy those very things in our own lives. It is not other people that always are destroying my life. You're ruining me. No, sometimes we make dumb decisions and we cross boundaries that we shouldn't have crossed, and there were consequences attached to those boundaries, and I ruined my own life. And it's really tough when we have to sit there and look back and go, you know, because I did that, it was a stupid mistake, and really I should have known better, but I did it, and look at this. I crossed that line, and look what happened. We can learn a lot from those limits, and sometimes we have to decide. We are responsible for deciding, not somebody else, our finances, the boundaries for our finances, boundaries for spending, what our limits are. How about boundaries for dating? Single moms, single dads, people that have teens in the home. You need to have boundaries for male and female behaviors in dating and things of that nature, because if you don't, some of those consequences are really serious, and they can jack things up big time. So if we've screwed up, if we've crossed those boundaries, then we're responsible for figuring out, how do I restore? How do I restore sanity in my life? How do I restore things? How do I get back on track? You may not be able to eliminate the consequences that you're facing. Sometimes we have to live with those consequences, and we can't get out of them because it's a natural result of the actions that were taken or inactions that were taken. So we have to live with it, but we think, how do I get back on track now? I can't go back. I can't change what's already happened. But this is a brand new beginning. This is a brand new starting point, and we can start over. We have to get back to our boundaries. We got to get back to them. And so there may be times when you need to leave the safety of your boundaries. I want you to think about this. Sometimes you do need to leave the safety of your boundaries because you've got to take a risk to do something. You'll need to take a risk to start something or accomplish a task. But we have to weigh the pros and the cons of leaving the safety of that boundary in order to do that thing. And then when we do that, we need to weigh all possible consequences and the things that it could affect. And then in doing that, we'll be able to discern and judge with a reasonable amount of certainty whether or not it is feasible and good to take that risk, to leave that boundary for a moment, or whether it's not. And that's where good and sound and moral judgment comes in. And we need to take the time to do that. We have to look at the boundaries and whether or not we should leave the safety of it. So hopefully by doing that, we'll be able to discern whether or not we should cross those lines or whether we should refrain from it. Given the time to do that, most often we'll make the right decision. But if we just react and we don't think about boundaries and we don't give it a second thought, we could wind up in some deep trouble. And those within our household could end up in some deep trouble. And we don't want that for our loved ones. We really want there to be that protection, that safety, that security, and the freedom, along with the respect and the love that everybody deserves. All right, so this is your reminder. I want you to look inward. And I want you to think where your boundaries are right now. Do you have any boundaries? Are they serving you? Are they serving your family? Look inward. Are there boundaries in your life areas? And if you're not sure, I would recommend that you join us over at SOLMA, the School of Life Management Academy, at moveintoaction.com, where we will dive into this and we will look at those boundaries, and we will do so in loving and respectful ways that can help keep our families and ourselves on track, safe, secure, and free. Okay, that's it for this week. I'll see you guys next.